Welcome back. Are returning to the chapter where Milo meets the witch, Which, and she just told her story. I think this is chapter 5, into chapter 5. When she had finished, she sighed deeply and patted Milo gently on the shoulder and began knitting once again. "And you've been down here ever since then?" Milo asked Milo sympathetically. "Yes," she said sadly. "Most people have forgotten me entirely, or remember me wrongly as a witch, not a witch. But it matters not. It matters not," she went on unhappily, "for they are equally frightened of both." "Oh, I don't think you're frightening," said Milo. And Talk wagged his tail in agreement. "Thank you very much," said Faintly Macabre. "You may call me Aunt Faintly. Here, have a punctuation mark." And she held out a box of sugar-coated question marks, periods, commas, and exclamation points. "That's all I get to eat now." "Well, when I get out of here, I'm going to help you," Milo declared forcefully. "That's very nice of you," she replied. "But the only thing that can help me is the return of rhyme and reason." "The return of what?" asked Milo. "Rhyme and reason," she repeated. "But that's another long story, and you may not want to hear it." "We would like to very much," barked Talk. "We really would," agreed Milo, as the witch rocked slowly back and forth. And as the witch rocked slowly back and forth, she told them this story. So now we get to start chapter 6, Faintly Macabre's Story. That's the name of the witch. "Once upon a time, this land was a barren and frightening wilderness whose high rocky mountains sheltered the evil winds and whose barren valleys offered hospitality to no man. Few things grew, and those that did were bent and twisted, and their fruit was as bitter as wormwood. What wasn't waste was desert, and what wasn't desert was rock, and the demons of darkness made their home in the hills. Evil creatures roamed at will through the countryside and down to the sea. It was known as the Land of Null. Then one day a small ship appeared on the Sea of Knowledge. It carried a young prince seeking the fortune. In the name of goodness and truth, he laid claim to all the country and set out to explore his new domain. The demons and monsters and giants were furious at his presumption and banded together to drive him out. The earth shook with their battle. And when they had finished, all that remained to the prince was a small piece of land at the edge of the sea. "I'll build my city here," he declared, and that's what he did. Before long, more ships came bearing settlers for the new land, and the city grew and pushed its boundaries farther and farther out. Each day it was attacked anew, but nothing could destroy the prince's new city. And grow it did. Soon it was no longer just a city. It was a kingdom, and it was called the Kingdom of Wisdom. That picture. But outside the walls, all was not safe, and the new king vowed to conquer the land that was rightfully his. So each spring he set forth with his army, and each autumn he returned. And year by year, the kingdom grew larger and more prosperous. He took to himself a wife, and before long they had 2 fine young sons, to whom he taught everything he knew, so that one day they might rule wisely. When the boys grew into young manhood, the king called them to him and said, "I am becoming an old man, and I can no longer Go forth to battle. You must take my place and found new cities in the wilderness, for the kingdom of wisdom must grow. And so they did. One went south to the foothills of confusion and built Dictionopolis, the city of words. And one went north to the mountains of ignorance and built Digitopolis, the city of numbers. Both cities flourished mightily, and the demons were driven back still further. Soon other cities and towns were founded in new lands, and at last only the farthest reaches of the wilderness remained to these terrible creatures. And there they waited, ready to strike down all who ventured near or relaxed their guard. The two brothers were glad, however, to go their separate ways, for they were by nature very suspicious and jealous. Each one tried to outdo the other, and they worked so hard and diligently at it that before long their cities rivaled even wisdom and size and grandeur. "Words are more important than wisdom," said one privately. "Numbers are more important than wisdom," thought the other to himself, and they grew to dislike each other more and more. The old king, however, who knew nothing of his son's animosity, was very happy in the twilight of his reign, and spent his days quietly walking and contemplating in the royal gardens. His only regret was that he'd never had a daughter, for he loved little girls as much as he loved little boys. One day, as he was strolling peacefully about the gardens, he discovered two tiny babies that had been abandoned in a basket under the grape arbor. These were beautiful golden-haired girls. The king was overjoyed. "They had been sent to crown my old age," he cried, and called the queen, his ministers, the palace staff, and indeed the entire population to see them. "We'll call one Rhyme and this one Reason," he said, and so they became the Princess of Sweet Rhyme and the Princess of Pure Reason, and were brought up in the palace. And that is a good place to pause right at the introduction of Rhyme and Reason. There they are. I like this picture. They look so pretty. All righty. Right after their introduction, we'll pick it up next time. Until then.